Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name's Neil. If you're new here, welcome along. On this channel I make a range of maker related content. We do some projects, we have some discussions, some range of different things, hopefully something that you like. This week we're going to be sorting out this situation. This is the desk that I work at for my day job, and at the moment, to get my laptop so that the camera's at a sensible height, I've got it balanced on two boxes, and that's not going to do. So in this video I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions as I make myself a laptop stand to replace these two cardboard boxes. So the first step on this project is to mark up the wood. In this case I'm using a piece of oak I had left over, but you could use anything on this. You could use small plywood, you could use some pine and then stain it, whatever you've got available. In terms of marking this up, I'll leave a link down in the description which will give you a document showing the measurements I used. What I will say is those measurements were based on the laptop that I'm using, so you may want to modify these, make sure that it actually fits your laptop. Using a washer like you see me do here can be a really great way to get curves marked up nice and neatly. So we're going to focus on getting all the pieces for one side cut out first. This can then be used as a template for the other side. In this scenario I'm using a bandsaw because I'm lucky enough to have one, but you could cut these out with a jigsaw, or if you've not got as complex curves you could even cut it out with standard handsaw. You don't have to use the tools I have here. I'm lucky that I've got them, but it doesn't mean you can't make this without them. As you'll see, I'm cutting just outside the line. This because I know I'm going to sand this back, and I can sand it to the line and make sure it's nice and straight. Things like these curves I'm never going to be able to cut absolutely precisely on the bandsaw, so we use the sander later to straighten it up. In this scenario, the mid piece of the side is an absolutely straight piece, and I can use the fence there to give myself a nice straight cut. While it would be possible to spend a lot of time using maths to work out the exact angles I needed for all of these pieces, I prefer to do this much more building in space. So having these three pieces cut out, what I'm now doing is just working out what angle I want that top piece at. The bottom and the right hand side there I want to keep at 90 degrees, but the top angle is very much down to where I think it's going to sit nicely. Having decided on that, I'm just using a pencil to mark the joins there on the corners, and that will enable me to draw on the angles. As you can see, I knocked it slightly, the angles are still close enough, and because we're going to use this one as a template for the other, that's not a problem, they will both end up the same. For the bottom piece, because I want that right angle, I am just using a square to give me the 45 degree angles that I'm going to want on those two pieces. So having started to cut the angles out, I can line up the bottom piece and the right hand piece, but what you'll see in a second is I did actually mark up the top angle incorrectly on that upright. Unfortunately I spotted it in advance. It should be going this way, not this way. So having redone that, we then end up with these three pieces that form one side. Before we use this first side as a template, it's important to get it all sanded, make sure that all the bandsaw marks are out of it, and any areas where I didn't manage to cut it particularly straight are nicely squared off. I'm really lucky to be able to use this Triton sander, but again, there's no reason why you have to have these exact tools. You could do this with a hand sander, or you could even just do this with some sandpaper and a bit of elbow grease. It might just take a bit longer. If you are interested in any of the tools I've got, there's some affiliate links down in the description below, but as I say, please don't let tools put you off from making something. You can always make it with what you've got, you've just got to work out how. I use the sander just to refine the angles here, make sure that they're exactly right, and you'll see me getting the pieces and lining them up just so that I can check that that is working the way I expect it to, and that they're nice and straight. We're going to get it with no gaps. So having completed those three pieces for the first side, it's time to duplicate them for the second side. I'm not going to bore you by taking through every single one of those steps again, but essentially the process was to draw around each of the pieces and then cut them out. It's important to make sure that you keep the grain going the same way here, so make sure your scraps that you're using are similar pieces of wood with grain running in the same direction, but as you'll see here, we've got three pieces that match the other side. It's now time to get these stuck together. There are many ways you could do this, with dowels or with dominoes if you have a domino machine, but the simplest way and the approach I'm taking is to drill some holes in through the wood. You'll see I'm using clamps to just hold everything joined together in the right place so that the pilot hole goes all the way through, and I'm using a countersinking pilot bit which gives me the countersink for the screw to go into. I'm then going to just use glue to hold these together, but because what I'm gluing together is end grain on all these pieces, it's not particularly strong, the screws that I put in will therefore also help to just pull this all together. Whilst we're watching me glue this up, I would like to take a minute to ask you if you would kindly consider subscribing to the channel. It would be great to get some more people along for the journey as we build this up. And if you like the video, hit like, tell me in the comments what you'd like to see next. Are there any other projects that you'd like me to step by step? Because I'm only putting one screw in at each of these joins along with the glue, there's a risk as I put that screw in of it twisting the pieces together. Whilst I could twist them back, there's a risk that it could damage some of the corners on this. So what you'll see me doing here is using the clamp to hold these pieces aligned so that they can't twist. It's just a simple squeeze clamp, making sure the pieces are lined up, and then I can drive the screw into the end of that without twisting the pieces and without losing that alignment. It's then a process of wiping off any excess glue and then repeating again for the other join on that piece and then repeating again for the other side. This can be a bit fiddly with the clamps, but it's worth taking the time just to make sure you get them absolutely accurate. We need a method for joining the two sides of this together, and for this I'm going to use some oak dowels. I'm just working out here some placement, essentially putting them centered on those pieces, and then using my drill press to drill out the holes, starting with a smaller bit just to pilot into it, and then I'll go on to a bigger bit in a moment. Again, this could be done with a hand drill, absolutely don't need to own a pillar drill to make this work. What you'll see here in a second is that the larger drill bit I used is not really the right drill bit. I didn't have the correct drill bit, so in the name of getting things done, I used it anyway, but you will see that this bit here smokes quite a lot as it goes in and leaves a slightly burnt inside edge on it. This is not necessarily great practice, but sometimes you just want to get the job done. The length of these dowels is very much based on the width of the laptop I'm going to put on it, so this will be a bit custom to your own laptop. Before we get to putting this together, we get to do everybody's favourite job of sanding. Here you can see I've got a pad down, I've got a handheld orbital sander. I worked through a few different grits on this. I started with a 120, then did a 180, and then did a 220. I didn't take it any higher than that, I didn't see any need to on this piece. I'm not going to show you all the sanding because it's fairly boring to watch. I do want to reiterate though, there is absolutely no reason why you have to have an orbital sander to do this. You can sand this by hand. There's no need to have all the tools that I'm using in this video. Find a way that works for you. It's now time for the part where we find out if all our parts work and stick together. As you can see, I have popped the dowels into the holes. There's a little bit of glue in those holes, and I'm using a wooden mallet just to tap them in. The reason I'm using a wooden mallet is anything metal would run the risk of damaging the ends of the dowels. If you don't have a wooden mallet, I would suggest that the easiest way to do this is to put a small block of scrap wood between your hammer and the wood that you're hammering. As you can see, everything seems to be lining up, which is great, means that my measurements were pretty accurate, and this is where we get first chance to have a look at how the laptop stand looks. I've chosen to use a mineral oil and beeswax finish to rub onto this laptop stand. Whilst we watch that happen, the keen-eyed amongst you will notice that in this shot there are 2 dowels, and in the next shot there are 3. I realised as I was wiping the oil into this that the fronts were pushing in together quite a lot and it was putting a lot of pressure on the dowel joints. I've added an extra dowel in the top section of this just to link the two sides together and add some stability at the front. I chose not to add a fourth one and not to use the third one on the bottom because I still want to be able to push things like my calculator and things in underneath the keyboard, so I want the clear desk space there. But adding that third dowel made a big difference. Those of you who are looking at the measurements drawing that I've shared will see that the third dowel is actually marked on that as well for you. So after having applied finish to the whole stand, let it dry for a bit and buffed it off, what we have is a finished laptop stand that can go on my desk and make my work environment a load better. I hope this has inspired you. I hope it's shown you that you can make stuff reasonably easily with tools you've got lying around.